Everyone. It is our second to last sync, right? What's crazy? Um, so yeah, we'll get started with you all showing off kind of where you're at in um, the process of this last mega ticket. Um, and maybe if you could kind of tell us what like yeah, what's your progress so far? What have you all done? And I don't know if you have anything to demo. That's super cool. But if not, no big.
Um, I can start. I have like a small demo. Let's see. This work week I met with Lydia, or I'm sorry, Shannon and Isaiah early in the week, and we just kind of like we sorted like the issues we had, and we didn't assign them, but then eventually we did. And then we kind of like started the design conversation, but then I kind of dipped out of that. So I think that like saw Lydia and Shannon seem to be talking about that more throughout the week. And then I took this issue. I'm sure some of you or all of you remember that when you clicked a checkbox, it would like if it was already clicked previously, if you clicked it, it would update the database. Like if you click it once, this updates the database. There's like a little lag. And then previously, if you clicked it again, it would continue to update the database and not uncheck it. So this is the working demo of the code I added. So now it unclicks and then nothing happens to the database. And then if you click it, it updates the database. And then this check, kind of based on logic that we had implemented earlier, will stay for 24 hours essentially, and then it will uncheck itself. Or I guess it won't uncheck itself, but when it renders, it will not be checked. Yeah, so I added this to the list. Is this small? Should I make this bigger? Okay, yeah. I added this to the list item component, and we already had a checkbox input here, and then and then it was kind of like connected to a function. And so I refactored it a little where the checked is, a Boolean that lives in is checked lives in a use state hook here. So constant is checked, set is checked, use state. And then this on like rendering of the component will be true or false based on whether today's date, sorry, today's date, the difference between today's date and the date last purchased is less than 24 hours, 1 day in milliseconds. And then or it's false. So that's this like on rendering how it decides whether it's checked or unchecked. The other piece, this is a little bit of a tangent, is I made this 1 day in milliseconds, which I think was living in date.js. I made it exportable and then I exported it into list item. And I think that's the only place I exported it, but I might have also exported it somewhere else we're using it. Let me see. Oh yeah, I also exported it. That's definitely gonna say. I imported it into Firebase for the places where we used this as well. So that was like just like a utility thing I added that's not in my pull request. Okay. Let's see. So then that's how this renders. It looks at that use state, and then when you click the checkbox on change, triggers this toggle checkbox function, which is here. And then this is basically it toggles the Boolean in the use state is checked. So if it's false, it becomes true. Or if it's true, it becomes false. And then based on the Boolean, if it's unchecked and you check it, so if it's true and it becomes untrue, it updates it using that update item. And then this, I don't know, maybe people know this, but like this was confusing me why it needed to be, if it's not true, update the item. But I think basically what I understand is like once you start the function, even though here you're toggling it, that isn't available from the use state hook within the same function, if that makes sense. So like you toggle is checked up here. So let's say it's true and you toggle it to false. That when it says if is checked, it's not gonna read what it was changed to. Here it's gonna read what it was at the start of the function. So this will still look at it as being true, even though this line toggles it to false in the hook. Okay, I hope that makes sense because I was confused by that. Anyway, um, I think that is the full demo. Any questions?
Super, super awesome. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting quirk, right? So the state setters are asynchronous. So it'll start executing that and then continue executing the function. And so the value of that next is checked. It can become a bit of a race condition, because it's not necessarily what it updates it to, but it's what it was like potentially when it started updating. Unless that thing is so fast that it gets there before it got to the next part, right? Um, Inside of set is checked, that actually also takes a callback. So, and that could be something to look into. Like, so you can pass things directly into set is checked, or you can pass a function into set is checked, which gets the previous value, and then you return the future value. And so in that way, you can always make sure that you know what set is checked is at that time when executing the function.
Oh, here.
Yeah, yeah. So like set is
That makes
checked.
sense.
Instead, you pass a function into it and then execute your update item inside of that function.
Okay. So wait, are you saying right now that without having a function, it's not true that this will always be reading what is checked is at the instantiation of the function? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if you were to have like if you were to have maybe an await on line 16
Mm-hmm.
that had something else asynchronous, and line 18 had to wait for that thing to complete, then uh, is checked would be the value after set is checked had executed,
Oh, okay.
versus most like I think this would be the case. But if you don't have anything, if there's nothing happening in between and it just goes straight down to that, it's going to get the value before it was executed.
Okay,
Because like
yeah.
set is checked starts its thing and then it continues proceeding. We're not waiting for it to finish before we keep on going in the code.
So if there was no await, then it won't await. Yeah,
Yeah, if there's nothing to stop it proceeding, then like the rest of the code is going to get there right
right.
away, right? The other
Cool.
thing that you could do is right now toggle checkbox is it's not getting any arguments, right?
Hmm.
Because it's that callback that like you invoke without any arguments. You could have it like rather than having it be a callback that gets no arguments, you could pass it in um,
I could check
just
pass in
directly
is
without
checked like
you.
this.
Yeah, you can pass it in to on change. Oh, you could pass in is checked, and that would give you that value at that time.
Okay,
Or if you
cool.
made this just like not the in that callback form, but
Hmm.
still just toggle checkbox not executed, then it would
Hmm.
get the value of the event. It would get the
Mm.
the event as an argument, and then you could take the value of is checked off of or checked off of that. Um,
Mm.
and that one's weird though because I think it comes in as like the opposite state that you would expect. It's like
Oh,
it's the state that it was before, or something like that. But there's a lot of different ways to skin the same
But
thing.
is this way is
This,
fine?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'd look into the callback thing just for like total safety. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, cool. That's really interesting to know. I've noticed that behavior before, but I definitely had to read about it again because I was like, wait, why is this happening?
yeah, yeah. Async stuff is weird.
Thank you.
Awesome word.
I passed the mic, unless there are more questions.
I'm interested about the like design process and how that's going.
Designing is hard. I don't actually like really know how to do it. And then I got nervous and jumped the gun and put stuff in CSS. So I can share what I did. I don't know, it's not, you know, it's not the perfect instantiation of a design. It's just something. Um, but
Thanks for working on it, Lydia. I
yeah,
hope
I
you
think
don't feel
Yeah,
too
thanks.
nervous. We're really just grateful.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
all right.
it's good.
I will share and I will show what I did, which yeah. So currently I'm in
Whoa.
dark mode. I used both dark mode and light mode. Um, and let me see. I'll switch over. The difficult thing I found was thinking about screen sizes. So I used uh, this. Um, and if let me see. If I create a new list, does that actually work? No, it doesn't work. Okay. Um, I also added, I did some styling on the screen that shows up here. Oh, that is full of errors. I think I don't actually, yeah, it's not actually connected to anything. I started this one last night. Um, it's not a problem with our site. Okay, it broke. Um, that's okay. I will, let me see, pull up the code. So I've got stuff kind of all over the place. I put most of my changes in index.css because everything is kind of split into different files, and I wanted to apply changes globally. So I haven't done anything to take out all of the existing color values, but I added a set of color values here for just contrast colors. And because they show up here in the root and they show up in the media screen version or like at the media query version of root, um, they are applied everywhere. And if we decide, oh, we hate those colors, they're dumb, we can change them in like 1 or 2 steps, which is great. Um, oh, I also um, I changed the header a little bit, which I think looks kind of dumb, so I could use some thoughts on how to more effectively do that. So I added the title that we came up with and a description. It is a smart shopping list, and the name of the token, which I think is useful to have on the header if we have one signed in. So that then we don't have to place it on the page that we're using and you see it from everywhere if you want it. But that probably needs to be a little bit different. And I think that the whole layout looks kind of clumsy and weird. Yeah, I made a bunch of little changes all over the place. And in list item, I added transparency. I'm not sure how effective that is. And I took off the varying colors in the indicators because I'm not confident about making those like visually accessible. It's complicated. Yeah, I think that's like all I've got to say. Any thoughts or questions?
Is this all CSS or did you use I don't know if I forget what it's called for some reason, like Material UI or Tailwind
Like a
CSS?
design library or something? It's
Yes.
all CSS.
Okay. I was thinking when you were talking about the screen sizes, I know that a lot of them kind of have it built in to resize based on the screen size. So that's like something we could consider.
Hmm.
How did you do the screen sizes currently?
I stuck with the basics of what we already had to start with because there's already a framework and it's mostly pretty good.
Okay.
I added one breakpoint somewhere, oh, in the header, I think, in layout.css. Right here. So a max width of 500. I changed the header layout
Okay, cool.
to put it below like this thing that was on the side.
Mm-hmm.
In here, if I set it to Galaxy Fold, there everything gets kind of messy.
Nobody has a Galaxy Fold.
But like, yeah. Uh, that's we can make some changes or yeah.
It looks really good.
Yeah,
I
Thank
like the
you.
gradient single color myself.
Okay.
And I think like the CSS that you have now is great. I certainly think like with something that like is like a really good spot for us to be in with 1 week left. It looks basically done.
yeah. I so the gradient is meant to essentially replace the color that we had before, right?
Hmm.
Okay. I like it. I
Cool.
think it's visually appealing.
Mm-hmm.
And did you all have any conversations around like what's the what's the look and feel that you're going for? Like the just kind of like, do we want business? Do we want fun? Any of those kinds of things?
We didn't like do words. Like I think
Hmm.
there was like a activity offered to just like list adjectives. But we did start like a mood board thread and people were posting stuff in it. And I think like it was a fun, like generally fun mood board. So in that way, like we had like kind of like some style alignment, but yeah, we didn't do I don't think anybody has been like, I want it to be practical and romantic. So
Oh man. Yeah.
On Wednesday, you all chatted through some ideas as well.
how did that go?
It was good. I was just laughing because Lydia was the same. She was like, "Oh, I just kind of put a few things together," and then she had like 5 different mock-up designs. And then this morning she's like, "It's okay," and it's like, boom, basically almost a finished product. I thought it looked really good, Lydia, and you didn't even have many breakpoints yet. It was already being very responsive for different screen sizes. So that's great thinking mobile first and kind of, yeah, having it move out.
And how about with the you're using these variables for the colors? Did you tell me about naming of those? Because you said you can like we can swap them out. Um, have you created any new variables? And then did you is there any method to the naming? Either things that already existed and you can explain the methods of that managed there, or like new things that you've added?
I didn't name things in a way that is easy to think about. So I think I used the names like for the colors. Just HSL vowels, which is not very evocative. Which I mean, maybe I could change that and use something describing. That would make sense, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to think about it because it's complicated. Because what I ended up doing to get the transparency was putting just the numbers into a variable and then using those numbers to make the color.
Mm-hmm.
And it would probably be helpful to see what the color is in the CSS because you don't right now because it's there are those 2 steps.
But then what's the downside if you say what the color is?
Yeah, there's
the
really the only downside would be that you'd have to change it if you change the color, and that would not be that hard. That would be like a single
yeah,
copy and paste.
but it is kind of nice that you can, if you're not describing the actual color and you're describing it as like, this is soon, this is like it's utility, and you can just make a single swap out in a single spot and be like, oh, you know what? We're gonna make this color fun, or like we're gonna make all of the yellows are now greens, and you don't have to go through and be like, so we change the name of the variable everywhere. Which is kind of a cool idea within it's like it's tokenization of design property, which is I think really really valuable to be able to change the entire like look and feel in just a few little things, which I feel like it's doing right now, which is really cool. I don't know if that was already set up or yeah. But it looks like a very, very healthy code base to me. Yeah.
Cool.
And so I think we'll swap over just one in just a second. I have one more question. How is everyone feeling about like um the dynamics of things, like how you're all working right now? Any things as we go into this last week and last push, any things that we want to try out and change, any things that we really really liked, just like little tiny mini retro questions like before we go in. Oh, and is there more demoing? If we can ignore that and keep that questions async, Shannon, if you have other stuff to demo.
I will. I don't know if I should or if I have to or whatever, but I did write some code and make a PR. I don't know if we should do that. Demo it, sure or not. We can all see if it works.
I'd be super interested to see that.
All right, cool. I'll do it.
And then we can just like think about maybe noodle on the what I had been mentioning.
It might be helpful since we're talking about design because the page is going to change with the feature that I added. And I also have some questions I want to run past the everybody else. So anyway, this week ouch, my cat's attacking me. I added some functionality so that we could actually really join other lists and see the list that we joined. And then I also added a feature to copy. So let me share. But I have a question because I think I missed something, or hold on, let's see, where are we? All right. Anyway, so this week we wanted to join a list and be able to share lists. So when I went and first started work on this, like we kind of already started this prior in the project, but it really wasn't working. So I just made a couple changes to like how we were navigating. So in the home page on the component here, this is where we were able to add a list token. And before I made this change, you could copy a token in, and it technically was changing the list page, but it wasn't redirecting you from home to the list. So I made that happen. I'm trying to think of even like where I am up here. So I added this code in the handle submit function to help us navigate when we do have a token. It takes you to the actual list page. And then, which was fairly simple, I just changed, I imported use navigate. Rather, we had navigate, just navigate up here. So then use navigate actually navigated, which was pretty fun. I love it when code works and does stuff. And then in the list page, so I know we want to be able to share lists, and we want to be able to switch lists. And at first I was like, well, if you can share a list, you can switch a list. But after I finished all this and started thinking about it as a user, that kind of sucks. So right now, when you navigate from the home page to the list page, whether you enter a token or not, anytime you're on the list page, next to the list token, I added a share, a copy and paste button. This, I had no idea how to do this. So I just like Googled it, like, hey, this is what I want to try to do. Like, how do I do this? And so I read a bunch about this temporary input and how I could make a copy and paste work. So now when you hit the button, it copies the current 3-word token into your clipboard. My question is this: after I did all this and was like, oh, I'm so stoked that I wrote some code that works, I was like, maybe, what do you guys think about, look, so let's say we're on the home page and we want to switch lists. You don't know what your lists are, right? You got to go into the Firebase and find the lists and copy and paste. What if on the landing page underneath create a list, join a list, I was able to implement some kind of functionality that displays prior lists or lists you already have, so that maybe in my head, I was like, well, why don't I list the list and then you copy and paste them? But that's silly. If I'm going to figure out a way to map through the list and like get them to render on the screen, why don't we just write a switch button? You know what I mean? Like at the end of the list, and you click it and it switches you to that list. I don't know. I feel like I jumped the gun on this PR, and there's more work I could have done to make switching lists a little easier. But at least right now, it is able to join a list. It navigates you to that list page. And you do have the option to do a simple copy and paste. So I don't know if that satisfies switching lists. Oh, and also the form field clears if you put in the wrong list token and you don't have a list token prior, the wrong name just stayed in there and you had to like delete. So I made that go away immediately on submit. What do you think about switching lists? I'm open. And questions and suggestions and whatnot.
I have a quick question, Shannon.
Yes.
So when you right now, if you have a token that's already set,
Yep.
is there, if you do what you do, will it delete that token and put the new token in? Or do you still have to manually delete a token, like in the console before putting a new token in?
Like, do you want me to I'm not totally sure I understand. So so like here, let's go. Here's our list. Right
Yeah.
now we're on
So
this
like,
list.
right. So if I want to switch to a new one, like if you copy and paste it, will it just go?
List not found. And then let's go to cigars because I know that one's there.
Cool. Wait,
Does
and
that-
then is that the one we were just on, or is
No.
that different?
We switched. So
Oh.
now we're on cigar, whatever. If we go back to home, we can switch back to that mud one. Does that answer your question?
Oh yes, that does. That does answer my question. Cool.
Okay. Yeah, so it does that, but I should have just demoed, duh.
Cool.
But I was thinking like, I don't know what the best way to switch lists is. Like, because if we go here, right, we can go to, we'll switch because we know we're on mud, right? This is the only thing that I have that could be considered a switch, like to switch or share. But I feel like as a user, it's like, okay, like, I don't know. It's doing some stuff. We're able to share and we're able to switch lists, but I feel like, join lists, but I feel like switching, like what if it's just me and I want to go to like my clothes shopping list or whatever? It would be nice to have like a display of what current lists I already have. I was thinking about that, but
One,
yeah. Yep, listening.
yeah, I guess two things.
Yeah.
And then I think we'll need to wrap up demos. This experience right here of being like, okay, we just want to be able to switch lists. Like this
Right.
is the kind of thing oftentimes you'll get from a product manager or a designer, and they'll be like, this is this functionality that we want. And then you'll start building it and you're like, wait a second, I didn't even think about this.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
And just want to like point that out so you like, yeah, take a moment and reflect on that and be like, oh, interesting. What did I learn? And also it's kind of experience that you can bring up in interviews, right?
Yeah.
Of like, yeah. The more specific to this thing, I think keep in mind that there's no like ownership of lists. So it's like all lists that exist and they're not attached to a single user. You could
Yeah.
have it go and just like display every list that has ever existed. But then you'd also be displaying of everyone else. And so I wouldn't get too carried away in the functionality. I love what you have now, that like copying, being able to paste in a new one and stuff. But just my 2 cents would be, don't get too carried away because you could go down a pretty big rabbit hole of like needing to implement some sort of authentication to associate a person with their
Yeah,
list.
and so yeah, I know. After this yesterday, you guys, literally, it's all I thought about all day. I was supposed to like go out and have fun with friends, and I'm like, they're all like smoking weed, and I'm like thinking, well, wait a minute, yeah, so I appreciate that, and yay, it switches lists and we can share, guys.
Nice.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Is everyone okay if we move on to Matt's awesome presentation on communication today?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, so mine, I think we just had mine, and mine was super simple anyways because it was just adding error messages. So there's not too much to it. So yeah, I'm totally down to skip and move on.
Cool. And if we have any extra time at the end, we can come back.
No worries, no worries.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna say too, Shannon. I mean, this is definitely a nice to have, but yeah, you could do like recently viewed, as a member, so then you don't have to authenticate. You can use as the local storage and whatnot. But that's cool. I'm not even thinking about it. Let's see. So, share screen. I am just on my laptop, which I don't operate as well from, so bear with me. This isn't as well. So that should be sharing my entire screen. Can you see like multiple tabs? Cool. Okay. So let me slideshow. Alrighty. So this learning module is about communication for developers. And so some of this is going to sound familiar, which is good. And maybe it wouldn't have sounded familiar when we begun about 6-7 weeks ago, but now it should. And so, sorry. Main message of this entire thing is that communication is key. Whoops. Oh man. Again, once I'm only on one computer, I lose things. Communication is key. It's, quote, a soft skill. I know a lot of people don't like that term, and I'm probably in that camp. It's pretty core skill to development, especially working remotely. So the first, we're going to cover kind of 3 main topics. So the first one is documentation. This one we haven't really done as much with Collab Lab. There's probably, I guess in the repo, if we uploaded some documents, that's where we would do it. But documentation is handled differently. Different organizations, sometimes it will be in like a shared Google Doc, or it could be like a markdown file that's committed to your company's repo. And so the main purpose is what did I do again? If anyone's like me, I'm kind of like Dory, I think her name is, from Finding Nemo. I forget things very quickly. Last week feels like last month, etc. And so just kind of remembering what you actually did. Documentation is very helpful for that. And writing things down helps you learn. Plenty of evidence that shows it actually, just the act of writing down forms new grooves in your brain. And so it helps you retain the information for later. And it also, when you're writing things down, you might remember things that you weren't thinking of initially. It's a great tool for revisiting big decisions. This pops up a lot in my work, where people are like, oh, why don't we just do it this way? And if you don't have a resource to be like, this is actually why we did it, and we put a lot of thought into why we did it this way, not that you can't be changed, but having that resource to look at and be like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense, is very important. And then, yes, so useful for onboarding new team members. It is very nice when you join a company and they have documentation. It gets you up to speed a lot faster. Avoiding institutional knowledge. And so kind of a similar thing, documentation, it's more open source for the team. So everyone has the same access to the information, and then empowers all team members in the same way, that everyone has the access and they can learn from it. And also they can add to it. And so they have that autonomy to, or, you know, they're able to, don't bite me, they're able to contribute. So quick tips. So yeah, that was the what and the why. This is the how. Write for the person who knows the least. I think it's one of those like explain it to me like I'm 5 type things. I used to work in hospitality, and I used to update the websites and emails for like Airbnbs and bed and breakfast. And I learned very quickly you really have to simplify it to the most basic level, so that everybody understands. And on the flip side, you also want to optimize it for the person who needs a quick reference. And that can be done through formatting, keywords, so people can quickly scan and find what they're looking for. There's a few links in here. I'm just going to kind of go through, but I can share this slide if people want to kind of look at the examples. This link's actually broken, unfortunately, but if you do go to reactrouter.com, their documentation overall is great. So it's a good example. And the next one, which should be pretty familiar by now, pull requests. So, oops, I'm just going to look at the chat message real quick. Mike mentioned one thing he also likes to do, which is kind of weird, is making it fun. Yeah. Yeah, it's much more, you also retain it more, I think, when you're reading through something that's like entertaining. It sticks with you more. So totally agree with that. the pull request gives reviewers context on your code. And that could be done through the descriptions. And then a big part of interviewing is walking through code. So having a robust PR description helps you remember what you did. Oops. Similar to kind of what Mike just said, in terms of making it fun, you could do this with documentation with pull requests as well, adding screenshots, GIFs, videos, links to resources or permalinks to code you reference. I do this all the time. I'll reference back to previous PR, or like an MDN doc if I'm using kind of like a new tool that's maybe available to us with like a new rollout. And then I think the biggest one here, at least for myself, is self-reviewing before asking others to review your code. I always walk through very slowly and make sure that I understand it, because if I don't understand it, others probably won't. And then once people get tagged in it, at least on my company, it then gets commented on, they start getting a bunch of updates. And so I try to be conscious of other people's notifications. So I really try to add my comments, make sure it all makes sense, refactor anything I need to do before I bring other people in. And in the next thing we talk about with comments, that's a great way of doing that as well. Keeping PR small and narrowly scoped. The ticket lends itself to this a little bit. However, even a big ticket, you could break down into smaller PRs, and that's often encouraged. It reduces bugs. It makes it a lot easier to review for the reviewer. It's just a great idea to keep it small and kind of to the point. And then this PR description links to one that Stacy did, which is a good one to look at. And I can open those up after this slide if people are interested. And then the last piece of this slide is comments in code. And so this gives your team more context while they're actively tracing through the code that you implemented. And now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if this is related to the pull request or the code itself. It's probably the latter, actually. But in the pull request too, you can go through and comment. I like to kind of preempt. So if there's something in there that I don't think intuitively makes sense when you're just reviewing it, and someone might have a question, I'll kind of preempt their question and explain it, to kind of save them time and help explain. But then, yeah, in your code itself, if you kind of want to give a little extra background on the why, I think maybe that's the next slide. You can, add comments to the actual function. I think the JS docs, when you create a method, often you'll kind of explain what the function is doing. And then when you hover over it in your IDE, it'll show you that description. But yeah, code can in some ways be self-documenting, but the decisions behind the code are not always self-apparent. So that's where the comments in the code can be really helpful. And you want to focus on the why the code was written rather than what the code does. And so not every function or every piece of code needs comments, but some are a little trickier than others and may not make sense at first glance. So that's where those comments are very helpful. And then there's also some great examples of code comments with that link. And yeah, I'm going to glance at the chat real quick. Mike messaged a pro tip. If you could use Copilot, you could ask it to explain code blocks for you. Pretty good. You can also write comments to explain what you want and have it write the code. I have not used Copilot yet. I need to look at that. I feel like I'm behind on some of this newer stuff. And yeah, brainstorm, I guess just a quick, if you have any feedback, like what have your experiences with documentation, PR description, code comments, etc. been like? That could be as part of this group, as part of Collab Lab, or maybe before, or the difference between how you were doing it before and how you're doing it now. Yeah, happy to open the floor if anyone has any thoughts on this subject.
I want to thank everyone on my team for the great comments that we already do have in our code. I know that over the past week, like bopping around through our code base and whatnot, there have been some really helpful comments. So I love commented code. Like I literally was like, what the hell? And then I'm like, oh, rad, look, that's what the hell. Because there's like literal explanations. So good jobs, props to everybody. I love it.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with a lot of the comments too. Often you all have like beat me to the idea that I thought when I was first scanning through it, and I'm like, oh, that's already been called out. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I've also been seeing really great conversations in the PRs. And some of them, maybe I'm making this up in my mind, but maybe I'm not. Some seem to be coming from self-review, I guess, of like, hey, I wasn't sure what to do here. So I put this, in, which is just like super awesome. Self-review of your code and starting conversations is really, really cool. I've been loving to see that.
Yeah, and that's something I didn't mention in the presentation is it's I think actually in a previous presentation we talked about how PRs can be they're conversations, and so often I'll put I did it this way, it works, it could probably be better. Anything, I'm open to suggestions. What do you all think? And usually that leads to like really cool refactors that make it way better and speed us up and fix issues down the line. So yeah, that's cool.
And one thing that we do at Zapier, we have a general principle that's defaulting to transparency. So we like as soon as you start coding, even if it's not ready at all, you open up a PR and just mark it as a draft, so that people can see like what you're doing in your progress, and then you can start the conversation on an unfinished thing, which is so scary to do sometimes because you're like, well, this is a crazy idea, but I'm going to push it up there and everyone can see it. But it's nice to like start conversations early, right?
I'm looking at the README for, I know there's like a pretty big README in our project already, but I guess I'm wondering, like in other Collab lab groups, do people typically add to the README, or what is the history with that?
Yeah, I feel like I've maybe seen it changed a little bit, but in my nothing has really stood out as like significant changes to the README. But I would say if you're um, as a developer coming into the project, if you're like making significant changes, like let's say you were to rather than a start command, like we're changing that to start API. If there's like you do some things, you'd want to update the README. Also with like tests, if you're adding in tests, maybe have some documentation there, like things from a developer standpoint where you're changing around the project is kind of when you'd want to think about updating it.
In terms of this one, I don't know your thoughts, Mike, but yeah, I mean, if there's stuff that you need to add, I mean, this is your group project, and if there's additional information that would make sense for someone coming in based on like the direction that the app goes, then that's definitely open to editing. I would just do it through the same process of branches and PRs and whatnot.
I saw there's a README in the API folder that is there to be filled out that hasn't been filled out. So if anyone wants to do some documentation, that's there.
And especially because at a certain point, the Firebase access will be cut off. So you may need to go and make a new Firebase space or whatever, and then you may want to add some documentation about like, oh, how do we get in there? Stuff like that. Super awesome. Thanks, Matt. this really, really great job. And I have a quick question. I know Matt had been talking about at 2:30, we have some time with a designer to go over things. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to make it, but wanted to get a count on who can make it and whatnot. Cool. Awesome. And then any thoughts on like prep work going into it, or things like that? What do you
I
have
have
any burning
questions.
questions? Yeah,
Yeah, I have
yeah.
questions. So I feel like this is a big opportunity. We're out of time. Should we like come with questions? Like, or should we like chill and listen to what this person has to say and then like formulate questions? Like, I want to know how we can get the most out of this experience and like what to kind of expect. Maybe.
Yeah, I've never done this before. I don't know if this is the first time Mark has ever done this. I guess just my opinion would, yeah, I'd probably bring some questions. I'm assuming he'll probably give just a brief background on himself, and then he'll probably just open the floor to questions that you all have, just general questions. You could probably ask kind of like what his job might look like or how he looks at things. And then also you could bring your own design ideas or yeah, I think it's totally up to the group, however we want the meeting to go. It's a half hour, it'll go fast. So yeah.
I'd recommend coming armed with some questions and then also coming with like a very open mind about, you know, design critiques and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, it sounds like maybe meeting up right after this. So I don't want to intrude on that meeting. But yeah, let's just really quickly, last 2 minutes, just chat about like what to expect for the upcoming week and for next week. Because next week is our final sync, and it's also the big demo day. And in this last week, yeah, you'll really try to like make the app look like something that you can show off as, hey, this is a product. And but also want to say, keep in mind that this is not like a big deal to like kill yourself over. Don't stay up all night. Like, it's really cool to work on, but ultimately, like, it's not a life or death type of situation. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, and so next week we'll really be you'll be showing off the final product. It maybe could be a good idea to get together ahead of time to like go over the demo, maybe try running through it or something like that. Also, good idea if you can try to have the code merged, and then we can use use a link that's like live in production and stuff. That would also be super cool. But yeah, any final questions or comments before we take off?
I had one quick question.
Mhm.
So I noticed when I did my PR, it didn't have any issues at first, and then later, I think when people started merging, I started getting conflicts and stuff. Is it normal to like to just solve those conflicts on your own, or is that something where you're supposed to like discuss with others, like when there's merge conflicts and how to resolve them? I know it's a long question and we're about to be done, but
No, this happens all the time, and it's totally the nature of the game. I think that if the conflicts are something where it's obvious, like, oh, we wrote very different things on the same line, like we want both of them, then like you can totally just resolve that on your own. If you're both attempting to change things in ways that are different, and they're genuinely you don't know how to resolve them, you're like, do we want to have it disabled when we click, or do we want it to unclick, or things like that, then that's where you bring in the you'd want to chat with others about it. Does that answer? Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, really great work. Sorry, Isaiah, that we weren't able to get to your demo. We just got carried away with all the other super awesome demos. But yeah, we'll chat async, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing this last week and demo the super awesome thing next week. Cool. All right.
Thank you.
See y'all.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Ouch.